creating rubrics for assignments instead of me spending a lot of quizzes.
If I feed it my PowerPoint.
Well, hello again. It is 10:45, so I want to acknowledge the different responsible parties at the SIUE who helped us organize this day of events. As many of you know, we organize every year International Studies Day. This is the 9th edition on the 9th of April, so it should have been like a prompt for everybody to come flowing inside these two rooms. But hopefully more people will show up, and I see that there are people showing up. I wanted to give some special thanks for making this event possible to Dr. Kevin Leonard, the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences, Dr. Jessica Harris, Executive Vice Chancellor and Chief of Staff, Dr. Vance McCracken and Dr. Tisha Brooks, Associate Deans in the College of Arts and Science, Mr. Brian Hintersher, Director of Advising, College of Arts and Sciences, Event Services, Catering Services and Technical Services staff in the Morris University Center, and not in the least, the people who are willing to learn something new. So hopefully they will show. So it's 10:45. We'll go with the keynote speaker for today. I invite Dr. Kevin Leonard, our Dean of College of Arts and Sciences, to provide some introductory remarks.
Thank you so much. I want to primarily today welcome all of you on behalf of the College of Arts and Sciences. And I want to say a little bit about the International Studies program, and I want to extend some gratitude as well. So let me just say a little bit about the International Studies program. Many of you in the room know this already, but it was established in 2016. And it is distinctive within the college, and I'll say a little bit more about that. After it was founded, the numbers grew steadily until this event that we are all still living with, even though sometimes we like to forget the COVID-19 pandemic. But the COVID-19 pandemic restricted international study, which is a critical part of our international studies curriculum. And so the number of majors decreased as a result of the pandemic, but it's grown since then. And at the beginning of this semester, there were 21 international studies majors. And since 2016, since the creation of the program, 49 students have completed degrees in international studies. And the college is committed to supporting international studies and in working as we try to grow this distinctive program. As I mentioned, it is unusual within the college in that it is not housed in a department. It is interdisciplinary and it's remarkably flexible. So international studies majors are required to complete 4 core courses: International Studies 200, Essentials of International Studies; Geography 201, World Regions; Political Science 270, Introduction to International Relations; and INTS, International Studies 499, a senior assignment. And all of our majors have some kind of senior assignment. They also must complete 6 credit hours of study abroad, but the remaining 24 credit hours required for the degree can come from nearly any of the departments in the College of Arts and Sciences. And so that gives this degree an incredible degree of flexibility that allows international studies majors to design a course of study that speaks to their individual needs and interests. The International Studies program is fully aligned with the mission, vision, and values of Southern Illinois University Edwardsville, which is committed to achieving greater national and global recognition and academic prominence through innovative and interdisciplinary programs that empower individuals to achieve their full potential. So I think that international studies is really well aligned with the guiding vision of the institution. And the College of Arts and Sciences has always been pleased to support the International Studies program, and it's particularly excited about supporting International Studies Day, which brings outstanding scholars from a wide range of disciplines and community leaders to campus to share their knowledge and experiences with members of the SIUE community. And I'm very happy to welcome Dr. David Harrison of Swarthmore College, who has come to campus to help us to learn more about endangered languages, which is a topic of special interest to scholars from many different disciplines and also from interdisciplinary fields as well, and scholars from across the humanities and the social sciences, and perhaps even beyond those large areas of disciplines are really critically interested in this important topic. I just want to end by thanking you all for being here. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your interest in and your support for international studies at SIUE.
Thank you, Dean, for that introduction. I'm very happy to be here to help you all celebrate International Studies Day. My undergraduate major was International Studies, and that was before I got into anthropology or linguistics. So I really appreciate the kind of educational experience you can have in such a program and the career pathways that it can lead to. Today I'll be talking about endangered languages and the environment. And by way of introduction, I'm a linguist and an anthropologist, and I've been doing this kind of work for many years. And in all that time, one thing has never changed. Can you guess what hasn't changed in 20 years of me doing this work?
Languages are disappearing.
Languages are disappearing. Yeah, I was going to say my haircut has never changed in all that time. And another thing that has not changed in all that time is my methodology. So in anthropology, we use a methodology that's called participant observation. Participant observation. Can someone tell me, based on these photos, what am I doing that is participation and what am I doing that is observation? I'm going to be calling on the audience frequently today, so please be prepared to chime in. So what's the participation part in these photos?
Your outfits, like.
Yes, so on the left, I'm in Siberia, I'm wearing local clothing. On the right, I'm wearing leaves on my head, right? Not my normal appearance. What else? What else could be considered participation?
Hanging out with them.
Hanging out with the locals, yes. Lily?
I got you running. Thank you. I presume conversation and listening and talking about these.
Yes, conversation in the local languages. So those are all forms of participation, eating local foods, right? I'm also doing observation, right? So what am I doing that looks like observation? Yes, I'm using an old-fashioned notebook and pencil. Also, through this entire time, I have also used digital video, digital audio, and photography. So I'm not just low-tech. So this is participant observation. Now, in linguistics, our main methodology is something that we call linguistic elicitation. Linguistic elicitation. That means that we ask someone, how do you say dog in your language? They tell us, hopefully, or maybe if we're pointing to something, they tell us the word for finger. And then we write that down. We use the International Phonetic Alphabet to write that word down. And then, if I wrote it down correctly, I should be able to pronounce it back to them and they recognize what I'm saying. Or maybe they laugh at me or correct me. So that's linguistic elicitation. So these are the two methodologies that I've been using for many years in many different settings. And frankly, I think I have the best job in the world. I get to travel to remote places, meet brilliant and fascinating people, and learn about their cultures. Since this is a talk about endangered languages, I would like to start by teaching all of you a word in an endangered language. So if you could please say with me, kaplaye. Kaplaye. Turn to your neighbor, say kaplaye. So you have all just greeted each other in the very endangered Koro Aka language, which is spoken in northeastern India. To give you a sense of what it sounds like, I will play a clip of Abamu Degio singing in the language. So that's the Koro language. This is the kind of scenario where I do my research. This is one of my consultants and teachers. But Koro is just a tiny fraction of the linguistic diversity that is found in the world. It's actually surprising. even people with higher degree and higher education don't necessarily know how many languages are spoken in the world. You can try this later today. You can ask some of your friends or colleagues, how many languages are spoken in the world? You'll get all different kind of numbers. The current version of the Ethnologue, which is the definitive catalog of the world's languages, has something like 7,130. I like to use 7,000. It's a nice, easy number to remember. And we estimate that approximately half of the world's languages are endangered and may disappear. So there's a sense of urgency. And today I would like to talk a little bit about why languages are going extinct, where languages are going extinct, why does it matter, what will be lost, and what are people doing about this. In addition to being endangered, languages are unevenly distributed around the world, both geographically, if you were to look at a map of the world with a dot for every language, but also demographically. And I want to acknowledge Robbie Hart, who's here in the room, who helped me create this visualization. So on the left we have an upside-down pyramid representing the world's languages, and we see that the 85 biggest languages, there at the bottom, represent about 79% of the world's population. Then in the middle we have a group of medium-sized languages, approximately 3,000. They're spoken by about 21% of the world's population. Then in the base of the pyramid we have the majority of the world's languages, more than 3,500, and they're spoken by 0.1% of the world's population. So the distribution of languages to people is extremely skewed, and this is an accelerating trend. If we were to look at this 10 years into the future, it would be even more skewed than it is now. And this helps to explain why people who own and speak these languages, and also people who study and learn these languages, feel a sense of urgency. Many people have wondered whether language extinction is similar to species extinction, or maybe different from it, or are they somehow related? They are parallel extinction processes, but they are connected in some interesting ways. First, I'll just point out that languages are much more endangered than species. Secondly, I'll point out that we are in a similar state of knowledge with respect to languages as we are to species. What does that mean? Well, if you talk to a biologist, they will tell you that the majority of the plant and animal species that are thought to exist in the world have not yet been scientifically documented and taxonomized. The biosphere is basically awaiting discovery by scientists. But those species are known to local people. So it turns out that much of what humans know about the planet, what they know about plants and animals, is actually knowledge that is only found in small and endangered languages. So there's a deep connection between linguistic diversity and biodiversity. And you don't have to take my word for it. I meet everywhere I go people who have incredibly deep knowledge of biodiversity, such as Anselm Saru on the left. He lives in Vanuatu. He's a fisherman. He can name 250 different species of fish. And not only name them, but understand their behavior, their seasonal migrations, their uses, all of those things. Or you could talk to Hilarion Zamos Condori, who lives in the high Altiplano in Bolivia. He knows several hundred medicinal plants, and collectively, his people, the Kalawaya people, know 1,200 different medicinal plants that grow in the region. So there is an enormous knowledge base about the natural world that is found only in small languages. Some years ago, also with assistance from Robbie Hart, who's here, we created the concept of the language hotspot. And this is meant as a kind of visualization to help people visualize, since the distribution of languages is unequal and the level of endangerment is also unequal, where are the highest concentrations? And this map shows 13. Ultimately, we identified 24 language hotspots around the globe. A language hotspot has three characteristics. First, it has a high diversity of languages, many different languages. Secondly, it has high levels of endangerment for at least some of the languages, not necessarily all. And thirdly, it has low levels of scientific documentation. So many of the languages in a hotspot will have never previously been recorded or scientifically documented. So where you get those three factors, high diversity, high endangerment, low documentation, you have a language hotspot. And I set out with my research team to visit as many of the hotspots as possible. We were supported by the National Geographic Society and the National Science Foundation. And we visited many different hotspots. And so today I would like to invite you to come with me on a virtual tour of language hotspots. And we're going to start in Siberia, then we'll go to Melanesia, then we'll go to Vietnam, and we'll end up back in India where we started. And in each of those locations, we're going to meet some of the last speakers of the endangered languages spoken there. We're going to learn some of the wisdom that they have decided to share with us. And we're going to see different scenarios for language endangerment and different strategies for language survival. So let's start our tour. I want to start in a place that's very dear to my heart, Tuva, which is located in southern Siberia. The Tuvans are mostly nomadic people. There's about 250,000 of them. And I went to live there for a year to document the language, and I ultimately wrote a grammar and a dictionary, and I wrote my PhD dissertation on the Tuvan language. But when I got there, I didn't know anything about the language at all. I was living with a nomadic family. I wanted to be useful, so I was given the chore of collecting yak manure. This is very important in this environment. There's no other source of fuel. So I would go out, follow the yaks, you find the manure, you have a special tool for mashing it, you leave it in place, then you come back a couple days later and you flip it over like a pancake, mash the other side. Then you come back a few days later wearing a special basket, and you put it into the basket, you bring it back to the yurt encampment, you stack it up in a special pyramidal shape. Eventually it dries and it's considered clean, and you can bring it inside the yurt, burn it in the stove to cook tea or food. This is their only source of fuel. And what I discovered along the way was that at each stage of the metamorphosis of this animal product, they had a different name for it. I had a page in my notebook called 100 words for shit, which was an exaggeration, but there were several words at least. And so through this very humble task of collecting yak manure, I began to appreciate the richness of the lexicon, how they name and identify important concepts. I think maybe the best introduction I could offer you to Tuvan culture is through their world-famous art of throat singing, also known as overtone singing. How many of you have heard Tuvan throat singing? It's really remarkable. I'll just play a clip for you. This is a young man named Marat demonstrating. He's playing a banjo-like instrument, but he's demonstrating the art of Tuvan throat singing. And listen for the high ringing overtones above the modal voice. Sound. That's coming from a human vocal tract. Now, Tuvans have the same vocal tract that we have, but they do something remarkably different with it. And they also attune their ears to hear resonances in the sound signal that we normally don't listen to or pay attention to, and then they manipulate them for musical purposes. I could give a whole lecture on Tuvan throat singing, and if you're interested in it, there are many videos on YouTube that purport to teach you how to do Tuvan throat singing yourself. They say anyone can learn it. I just got a sore throat when I tried it. But what interested me in Tuvan throat singing was the song lyrics. So I began to listen to song lyrics. That's a good entree into any language. And a typical Tuvan love song, such as that one we just heard, would have a phrase that, like, my liver aches. So what would my liver aches mean in the context of a love song? Any idea?
I love you.
Partly, yeah. Yes?
Is it something to the extent like I'm so full of love?
Partly, yes. Really, it means it's unreciprocated love, right? So you're love sick right? Not just that you love someone, but they probably don't love you back, and so you're feeling sick. So Tubans believe that the liver is the seat of important emotions, including love. Now we know, of course, that emotion resides in the Well, would you send someone a picture of your brain on Valentine's Day? Right, so we have a different emotion. We have a different metaphor that emotion resides in the heart. Both of those metaphors, the liver and the heart, are biologically false. They're not correct. But they're very powerful metaphors, and they inform our ways of thinking about human emotion and human interactions. Another dilemma I had in Tuva was learning to say go, which seems like the first verb that you should learn on day one when you're immersed in the language. It turns out they have 5 different words for go in the Tuvan language, and I would try out different ones and people would either laugh at me or correct me, but they couldn't explain to me how to choose the correct word for go. So it turns out that you need to know something about geography in order to say go. And since I'm not from here, I will rely on all of your geographic knowledge. So could someone please point out to me where, from this point where we're sitting, where is the nearest river? Please point the direction to me. Okay, I see people pointing that. Well, it's not quite a consensus, but okay. You seem very certain about it. Okay, so the river's there. And now tell me, which direction is the current flowing in the river? Okay, south would be if you had to motion it with your hand. Okay, all right, great. So that's all we need to know. So in Tuvan, you declare your trajectory based relative to the current in the river. Are you going with the current, against the current, or across the current? And you can additionally specify if you're going on foot or on a motorcycle or horse. And you need that matrix of information. When I invited a Tuvan friend to visit me in New York City, he asked me where the river was on the first day. He wanted to calibrate his system. Now, if you're going on a journey in Tuva, it's customary to first talk with a shaman or a shamaness to see if it's a good omen. Is it a good day for traveling, or should you travel on a different day, perhaps? And in having conversations with shamans, I noticed that they talked about time in a way that was unfamiliar with me. When they talked about the past, they used body part metaphors relating to the nose and the forehead. And when they talked about the future, they used different metaphors relating to the scapula and the spine. And it took me a while to figure this out, but Tuvans believe that the past is located in front of you. It's visible to you, it's well known to you, it's familiar. The future, meanwhile, is sneaking up behind you. It's going to surprise you. So they've reversed this space-time metaphor that we think is very natural and familiar, and they see it differently. Eventually, I was promoted from yak manure collector to assistant goat herder. Goats are very important in the life of Tuvans. This is members of my host family caring for the goats. And this required a whole new vocabulary. So I want to play for you a clip where my host family is teaching me some of the 40 different words they have that describe the colors and patterns of goats. So all of these goats, some of which look similar to me, like I can't really tell the difference between the red and the yellow one, but they all have very specific names for the color pattern combinations. And this is not just a set of words, this is what we call a taxonomy. It's also a technology, if you think about it. If you own 500 goats, using this technology, you have the ability to look out and to very specifically single out an individual goat based on their pattern characteristics. And so this is part of their survival skills in this environment. Now, I had gone to Tuva with some of the best academic training in linguistics that one could have. I knew how to listen to any language and make a phonetic transcription. I knew how to do morphological analysis, breaking words down into their meaningful parts. I knew how to do syntax analysis, what's the structure of a phrase and sentence. But I was working under an incorrect assumption, because we're taught in linguistics that if you want to describe the grammar of a language, if you want to write a grammar, All you need is a speaker. It could even be yourself if you know the language. And you just sit in a room and ask questions of that speaker, and you can extract the grammar from their head and analyze it and put it down on paper. And this turns out not to be true. In the case of Tuvan, there's no way to understand or even learn the grammar of Tuvan unless you're actually living in the landscape with the goats and the rivers and all of those things. So this was a revelation for me. Living with the nomads really was a transformative experience for me, both as a person, but also as a scientist, thinking about the types of research questions I want to ask. So one of the big lessons I learned from Tuva is that language is not contained within the brain. It's actually more than the brain. It is capacious. It spills out. It includes not just grammars, but landscapes, rivers, plants, metaphors, time and space. And the knowledge base, the things that we don't know, like a classification system for goats, is vast. But it is also vulnerable and vanishing. So we've been in Tuva, in a very cold place. We're going to go now to Melanesia, to a very warm place, and see a different language scenario. I was very excited when I got the opportunity about 12 years ago to work in Vanuatu because it's the #1 language hotspot in the world. Vanuatu is a small country east of Australia. It's a Y-shaped archipelago, hundreds of islands. Small population, just 335,000 people, but they speak 113 languages. It's astonishing. There's no place on earth where you can go where the proportion of languages to people is anything like that. So I was very excited to work there, and I was invited to work there with botanists from the New York Botanical Garden. And their project was to document the biodiversity, to collect the plants, and to collect knowledge about the plants. And so they would go off and collect plants. This is Michael Balick, botanist. They would bring the plants back, lay them out in a tarp in the village, and then we would consult with experts like Takaronga Kuautonga, shown here. He's a local expert and actually a published anthropologist. And Mike would interview him about the uses of the plants. And my job as the linguist was to correctly elicit and transcribe the names of these plants. And there were hundreds, even thousands of plants that we documented in the course of this project. So it was a lot of data. And we found some really interesting things. For example, this knowledge is being lost because when people speak Bislama, which is the national language in Vanuatu, they just call both of these ferns bush cabbage. It's just a general term for this. But when they speak in their local language, for example, the Raga language, they call them by completely different names. So they're recognized as different species, different uses, but this gets conflated when you switch it over into a major language. Ultimately, we published a 2-volume set with almost 1,000 plants. We did 4,000 interviews with people, and we were able to bring this knowledge in published book form back to the community where they really highly value it and are concerned about its transmission. Now, knowledge about plants in Vanuatu is not just something that you might want to know or interesting to know. It actually is something that your survival depends on, because if you have the knowledge of how to collect and process plants to build a traditional house, then you can survive a Category 5 cyclone, which they get on a regular basis. In the villages, when a cyclone comes through, everyone knows they go into the traditional structures, and the modern structures made out of corrugated metal and cement blocks are completely flattened in the cyclone, but the traditional structures stand. So knowledge of plants is crucial to survival in this environment. Another thing I found impressive about this environment is that they're an oral culture. They don't use writing. They have a writing system, but they seldom use it. And as an oral culture, they're able to commit huge amounts of information to memory. It seems like a superpower to me. One example of it is this game that these two guys are playing. It's a mathematics and memory game where you lay out an array of shells, and one person has to look at the array for about a minute, memorize it, then turn his back. Meanwhile, the other person goes row by row and removes one shell at a time. And this guy has to remember exactly how many shells are left in each row. And it goes back and forth until he fails at some point. But basically, the things that they can do with their memory, because they're in an oral culture, are really phenomenal. I previously mentioned Anselon Saru, who can name 250 species of fish. And he told me the story of what happens when they catch a big fish like this, which is fantastic. You know, the whole village is going to feast on this tuna fish, and they have a celebratory song that they sing when they catch the tuna fish. So I would like to play that for you briefly. This is on the beach on Futuna Island, and it's a song celebrating the catching of a fish. So the next time you eat a tuna sandwich, I want you to think about the joy and excitement that these people experience when catching a fish. This song has 4 parts. The first verse of the song, the first stanza of the song, is sung when they are still out at sea in their outrigger canoes and they have just caught the fish, and they begin singing part 1 of the song. In that part 1, they mention pandanus fruits, which are bright orange, and they fall into the ocean and they float out to sea. So it's a plant that can be seen at that location. The second part of the song, which we just saw, is sung on the beach. They bring the canoes up onto the beach, and that is a song and dance, and it also mentions a purple flower that grows on a beach vine. So it is a plant. The third stanza is sung when they're on the trail leading from the beach up to the village. And at this point, the people up in the village can hear the song and they're beginning preparations for a feast. And that part mentions a bush that grows along the trail. The fourth part of the song is sung when they arrive in the village and they're preparing for the feast, and that mentions the sacred banyan tree which grows in the village. So this is not only a song about fish, it's also a botanical map of the island that tells you what grows where. And it shows how the knowledge is all melded together. Now, Anselone, the fisherman who caught this fish, he will not be allowed to eat it, not even a single bite. There is a taboo on fishermen eating the big fish. He can only eat the small fish, the flying fish, the less tasty ones. And this is, again, a survival mechanism. The fishermen provide survival and nutrition for the whole community, but they themselves have a restricted diet. So what do you do if you've caught a big, beautiful tuna fish and you can't eat it? Any idea? Well, he puts it on his social media. You're surprised by this, right? You didn't know that they have social media on Futuna Island. Yes, they do. And he has a collection of photographs of every fish he's ever caught. And this turned out to be a really valuable source of information because he became one of the co-authors on our Futuna Talking Dictionary, which contains many of the fish names that he knows and many plant names, of course. We're working with the community, and this is a truly community co-authored product that they are very proud of. One of the things that kind of bothered me when I was thinking about how he sails for many hours away from his island in a what looks to me like a very flimsy outrigger canoe. I'm sure it's very sturdy, but I wouldn't want to be out on the ocean in this canoe. And sometimes he sails out of sight of his island. So I asked him a very simple question: how do you get home again? Like, how do you know for sure that you're going to get back to your island? And he began describing to me what they call the wind compass system. So around Futuna Island, there is a system of 17 different winds. Each one has a name. Each one has personal characteristics. Each one has an anchor point on the island itself. And using all of his senses, his whole body, he's able to kind of tap into this system and use it. And this is part of the system, in addition to other environmental cues that he's paying attention to. This is part of the system that gets the fisherman back home to his island. However, this system is in danger of vanishing, and so I convened a meeting with some of the elders and the younger generation where they looked at a previously published version of the Wind Compass, and they updated it, they redrew it, they refined it, and they worked on transmitting it to the next generation. So this, again, is an important survival technology that is found in the language and that refers to the environment. So lessons from Vanuatu is that languages are survival tools. They contain the technologies that people have adapted to survive in challenging environments. And also the uniqueness of island cultures. After spending a lot of time in Siberia, which is very far from the ocean, suddenly I could observe and appreciate the special qualities of survival on islands. And what I admire about people in Vanuatu is that they are eager to adopt digital tools, but at the same time they adopt what they want, they use what they want, but they maintain what they call custom. They maintain their traditional ways, and I think this is a very admirable characteristic. Okay, so we've been in Siberia, we've been in Melanesia. I'm going to take you now quickly to Vietnam, where I've been recently. In 2022, I was offered a job in Hanoi to help a new startup university, and I relocated with my entire family to Vietnam. I knew before going there that Vietnam had immense linguistic diversity, something like 134 languages. Just in the southern part, there's 102 languages. Each number on this map represents a language. Of course, Vietnamese is the national language, widely spoken, but huge linguistic diversity. But I didn't know if I would have access to the ethnic minority communities. They tend to live in more remote areas. You have to have special permits and permission to visit them. And I was very fortunate to meet a Vietnamese anthropologist named Trân Huai, who invited me to visit his field site and to meet the Bana people. They live up in the Central Highlands. This is Chief Ben, one of the leaders of the Bana community. And this community immediately welcomed us, and we've had an amazing and very intense collaboration going on for 5 years now. What's special about the Bana community is their relationship to the forest. They believe that the forest is sacred, that it's animate, it's inhabited by spirits, it has agency. If you behave respectfully towards the forest, it will give you its bounty. If you disrespect the forest, it can punish you. Right? So they believe in forest agency, and this is their guiding spiritual understanding of the world, but it also can be seen as a conservation program. They're also agricultural specialists. They grow rice, they grow many different crops, and they have incredible knowledge about how to manage how to grow rice, how to build terraces, all about how to control the water and everything. They're really remarkable technologies in this community. Visually, what impresses you when you first arrive in a Bana village, and every village has the traditional house standing in the center of the village. And it's just this absolutely massive structure. It's so beautiful, it's an iconic symbol of their culture. And then Chief Ben invited me to take a closer look, and as we approached the house, he began telling me about it. We went inside, he began showing me, and I realized that this is not just a house. This is a marvel of engineering, of architecture, of botanical knowledge that requires more than 20 different plants collected from the forest at different times and places and processed in different ways. It requires advanced skills in engineering and architecture, and there's no plan or blueprint. All of this is handed down in the mind of the chief, and he has to mobilize and direct the entire community. It takes the whole community working together about 4 months to build this incredible structure, and they're very proud of it, and rightly so. And I brought my students with me to Vietnam, up into the highlands also, and this is one of my students on the right who probably thinks that he's about to go for a swim. The Bana people live on the river. In addition to having a special relationship to the forest, their life is tied to the river. So every day they have to cross back and forth on the river to get to their rice fields. It looks very precarious, but actually this is just an everyday commute for these people. But canoes themselves are a keystone cultural object, and they tell an interesting story about the environment, because if you build a canoe correctly, it can last for 30 years of free transportation. but the amount of expertise and labor that goes into it is immense. You have to know how to identify the right kind of tree in the forest, and the forests are receding from them, so they have to travel now many hours to reach the forest where they can find this type of tree. Then you have to have a specialist, an expert who understands how to fell the tree, how to rough out the tree, how to carve out the canoe, and then they bring it back to the village and they do more carving and they use fire and lots of different techniques. And it has to be seaworthy, it has to be something that will safely get you across the water. So building a canoe is an immense skill. And it reveals an interesting vocabulary as well. They have many different words in Bana describing subtle differences in river currents and the topography of the river and how to navigate your way across the river. So we began exploring all of these knowledge domains with the Bana people. They still actively produce more than 20 different types of baskets. Baskets are made by men in this community. They actively produce beautiful textiles. Those are done by women. They build canoes. Working with my students, we began compiling species checklists. We used a citizen science platform called iNaturalist, which anyone can download and use. You can put it on your phone, and people upload pictures of plants and animals to this platform. So we used that to generate a species checklist, and then we validated it with the community, and we began creating a Bana talking dictionary. I think the big breakthrough, though, from my point of view, so these are some of my Vietnamese students, and even though they grew up in Vietnam and they knew in their head that there are these ethnic minority people who live up in the mountains, they had never met any of them. And in fact, they were a little bit afraid of meeting them because there's a lot of social prejudice and bias. And when I told my colleagues at the university, I'm taking my students and we're going up to the highlands to meet the ethnic minorities, they said, "Oh, that's so great. You're going to bring them used clothing and toothbrushes, and you're going to help those poor people, and our students will learn about charity and empathy." And I said, no, that is not our purpose. Well, why are you going there? They couldn't imagine any reason why we would want to go there other than to deliver used clothing. And I said, no, we're going there because the Bana people are environmental experts, and they're going to teach us about sustainability and about the environment. And this was a really shocking and somewhat subversive idea in the context of Vietnamese higher education. But as soon as my students got there, they realized the richness of the culture, the hospitality, the complexity of the skills and the knowledge, and they just were off. Each student had a different thing. One was studying baskets, one was studying canoes, one was studying edible insects. They all found something they were passionate about, and it's been a great experience, and we've co-authored a number of papers on those topics. So lessons I learned from Vietnam is that languages are actually a platform for the survival of forests and biodiversity. They provide the knowledge base that is necessary for the forest to survive, and they're essential. If the languages go away, the forests are that much more vulnerable. Traditional skills such as basket making and canoes also tell a story about the environment. When a certain plant becomes scarce in the forest, the basket maker is the first one to notice it because he's trying to collect those plants for baskets. If trees for the canoes become scarce, the canoe maker notices it. And once they successfully and sustainably harvest those materials, you can tell from looking at the material what the health of the forest is. And there's so much to be learned from indigenous experts, not just knowledge, but also skills, applied skills, engineering, architecture, design. Okay, so we've been in Siberia, we've been in Melanesia, we've been in Vietnam. Wrapping up, I want to bring us back to India, where we started. I wonder if you can remember the greeting that I taught you in the Koro language. Kaplaya, excellent. I'll say it again, Kaplaya. So I refer to Koro as a hidden language. Why is it a hidden language? Well, first of all, it's spoken in a very remote part of India, up in the northeast, in the Himalayas. It was not listed in the Linguistic Survey of India when we began working on it. It was not listed in the Anthropology Survey of India because in India, there's so many different ethnic groups and languages, more than 500. They don't even count, the National Survey doesn't even count groups numbering fewer than 10,000. So they're kind of invisible. And locally, people did not consider this to be its own language. Now, the Koro people live a fairly traditional lifestyle. They live in bamboo houses. They raise pigs and chickens. They forage and hunt in the forest. And this is Abamu Degyo I showed you earlier. Her picture actually appeared in National Geographic magazine, and I brought her back a framed copy, and I said, thank you for sharing your culture with millions of people around the world. One of the things that has protected the language up to now is its relative isolation. So it's spoken in, I think, 6 or 7 villages. 3 or 4 of them cannot be reached by road. You have to travel on a raft and hike through the jungle. And so that has protected it. But at the same time, you know, they're citizens of India, which is a very modernizing and technological country. So many of the young people now go down to the major cities to get their education or for work, and roads are being built. And so their isolation is decreasing and the language is becoming vulnerable. When we first went there, we didn't know that this language existed, and we were making recordings of another language, a language called Russo-Aka. And the speakers, I'm here with my colleagues Greg Anderson and Ganesh Murmu, an Indian linguist. We were making recordings of a language called Russo-Aka, which we knew existed. And we had been studying it for about a week, and someone said to us, hey, have you guys heard the other dialect of our language? It's just a little bit different. It's another dialect. And they said, you go down to this particular village, and you'll hear the other dialect. It's called Koro-Aka. So we were curious about it. And we made some recordings of both languages, and this is what we found. So here's a sentence in Russo-Aka, the language that we knew about. I'm going to play it, and then just for fun, you can all try to repeat this sentence after, okay?
He, vu, gyu, zi.
He, vu, gyu, zi. Okay, that's Russo-Aka. That's how you say these 3 black pigs. Now we're going to hear that same sentence in Koro-Aka, the language that locally people said it's just a dialect, just a little bit different. So you don't need a degree in linguistics to know that these are not dialects. These languages resemble each other. They don't resemble each other at all. And yet, Koro-Aka was kind of invisible. It was spoken in the community, it was spoken in multilingual households, but people didn't recognize it as a language. And now that we have documented the language, we've been able to add 1 to the ethnologue number, so now it can be scientifically established that Koro-Aka is not a dialect. It's now recognized as a language. And why does this language matter, and why should it be protected? So, you know, as linguists, we have a kind of interest in promoting the idea that languages are endangered, languages need to be revitalized. This has become sort of part of the profession of linguistics, and I think a good part of the profession. But really what matters is what the owners and the speakers of the language think about it. So I would like you to hear directly from Anthony Degyo, who's a speaker of the Koro language. He's going to say something about why he thinks the language matters and why it should survive.
It's me, Anthony Degyo. I'm an Indian speaker of Koro-Aka language. I would like to say some few points about the Koro language. Why this Koro language is going extinct. Most of the families to send their childhood outside the village to study for a higher study. And when they come back to the village, they don't know how to speak the language, mother tongue. Very young girl or young man, a young boy could not speak a Koro language properly, and people used to mock at them. So it is a saying that loss of culture is loss of identity. That means if we lose our culture, then suddenly we are losing our identity. So we must continue our Koro language, continue our this traditional customs and languages, and follow the ancient our forefathers' teachings.
So I think Anthony's statement is very powerful. He's saying that the language connects them to the ancestors, but he's also giving his own linguistic autobiography. He is one of those people who at a young age, probably 6 or 7, he was sent from the village very far away to a boarding school in a city in a different state of India. At that boarding school, he was well cared for and he received an education, but he was not encouraged to speak his language. In fact, he was discouraged from using his tribal language. He speaks 5 languages. He speaks Hindi, English, Nepali, Koro Aka, Russo Aka. So he's a multilingual person, but he really felt the value of his own language. And when he came back to the village after several years of living in the boarding school, he did not speak the language perfectly. People made fun of him. He lost his confidence. He stopped using the language. And when I first met him, he actually denied knowing the language at all. But I delved a little deeper and I found out that his elder brother speaks it, his parents speak it, and it turned out that he is a speaker of the language. He just was shy about using it. He hadn't used it in a number of years. And then he was able to make this really beautiful statement about why the language matters and why it should survive. And I'd like to refer to Anthony and people like Sangay, also from the community, as language warriors. They are fighting to save their languages. This photograph was taken by National Geographic photographer Chris Rainier, and because of my affiliation with National Geographic, I often have the privilege of having a National Geographic photographer on my expeditions. But they tend to have a kind of a specific view of the world, cultures as beautiful objects, right? So Chris took this photo of Sangay, who is, he does have a silver crown and he has these beads, but you would only see him dressed like this twice a year during the Rice Harvest Festival. So I asked Chris to take a picture of Sangay in his everyday appearance, which he looks more like this. He's a young entrepreneur, he's a global citizen, he's a business owner, he's active on Facebook, so he's well connected. And Sangay and his friend Kandu, shown here, they have come up with a brilliant solution for saving their language, and I would like you to just hear it directly from them. So I apologize for the low volume, but I think you can still recognize the genre, right? What is that? Yeah, it's hip-hop. Hip-hop is a global phenomenon. I have many recordings of hip-hop, original hip-hop performed in endangered and minority languages. And it often preserves its character as a protest genre in those languages. In this case, they're rapping a little song about hot chili peppers and romance. And it's a genre that the elders in the community slightly disapprove of, right? So what could make it more cool for the 5- and 6-year-olds who are actually the deciders, the people who have agency to decide whether to keep the language or not? So this is how you keep a language alive. They are both global citizens. They speak 5 languages. The Koro Aka, their heritage language, it has no socioeconomic value outside of a few remote villages. They could easily just give it up and speak the other 4 or 5 languages that they know. But they've chosen not to do that. They've chosen to keep the language, and not only that, but to do something virtuoso and creative with it that will make it cool for the next generation. And Kandu and a delegation of Koro people at our invitation came to Washington, D.C. for the Smithsonian Folklife Festival, where they spent 10 days and they showcased their culture to 1 million visitors. So this points out some of the positive benefits of globalization that I've learned from Koro. First of all, we still don't know how many languages there are in the world. It's a common question, but even though there's a language extinction event happening right now, the number of listed languages will continue to increase as languages are noticed and documented. So Koro adds 1 to that number. Secondly, the question of dialect versus language. This is a very vexing question. When I give lectures all around the US on this topic, the number 1 question that people stand up and ask in Q&A is, what's the difference between a language and a dialect? Well, this is a clear-cut case where we have 2 things that people refer to as a dialect, but they are separate languages. There's a lot of gray area in there, and it continues to be an interesting question. And finally, I'll just point out that this shows the positive effects of globalization. So here's a language that was previously never heard outside of a few remote villages in the Himalayas. Now it has a global platform and a global audience thanks to the generosity of the community itself, who decided that they're willing to share their language, to share and promote their culture. And this is something very important. If we don't know about those languages, we can't possibly care about them. If we don't know about language diversity, we can't care about it. So what good is language diversity? You know, I don't think I need to make that argument for this audience. I know people here speak and love languages, and I know on your campus there's an emphasis on languages. But you have to think about the society we live in, where monolingualism is the norm, and other languages are often viewed with some suspicion, or people are afraid that Spanish somehow threatens the position of English, right? So we live in an environment where multilingualism is not championed. It is not viewed as an intellectual and social asset, but as some kind of learning detriment. And so we have to be able to overcome that mindset and let people understand that linguistic diversity is intellectual diversity. It provides different ways of thinking about common human problems and solving those problems, and it supports the health of the planet and global biodiversity. So I'll just close by saying kaplayet, which also means thank you. I think we have time for a question or two. I'm going to get my coffee while I'm waiting for a question.
So what was the film, the documentary that you had the last flip frame on? Tell us a little bit about that.
So this is a book that I wrote for National Geographic. It's called The Last Speakers. And this is for a general audience. It really showcases, you know, what I think are the very inspiring stories. People like Anthony that I've met, and these are two speakers of Koroaka on the cover. People who are language warriors who have made a strategic decision that they're going to keep their language, they're going to promote it, they're going to do hip-hop or whatever they need to do to keep their language. And I wanted to sort of tell their story, and I've been very fortunate to meet many of these people around the world and to listen to their stories. So this is a story of the quest to save the world's most endangered languages, and what I mean by that is not my quest as a linguist, but actually the local grassroots efforts that you can observe in communities all around the world that are very inspiring. Oh, yes, in the back.
Could you repeat for us the name of the villages in the Central Highlands of Vietnam?
Yes. So the province is called Kon Tum, K-O-N-T-U-M. And the village where I did my work is called Kon Ktu, almost the same, K-O-N-K-T-U. And the ethnic group is Banar, B-A-H-N-A-R. It's one of 130 some distinct languages and ethnic groups spoken in Vietnam. Yes.
So when you said you and your family moved to Vietnam to help establish this new university, why did they want to do it? I mean, were they particularly interested in these minority languages, or? No, the university that recruited me in Vietnam was not, didn't know about linguistics or anthropology at all. And I have some administrative experience at Swarthmore College, and so they were interested in me for that reason. But when they hired me, I said, you know, I'm an active researcher in my field, and I want to set aside a portion of my time to do research. I didn't know if it was even possible. It turned out to be not only possible, but really an incredible experience. So, and then when I began bringing my students who had also never heard of anthropology or linguistics, but they came back all excited, and they began telling their families and their colleagues, and word spread. And so now the university is at least aware that not everybody has to be a business major or a psychology major. There are other things, there are other subjects relating to cultural diversity that also are beneficial for students' learning. So I think that's maybe a small contribution I was able to make. Yes?
Hi, so I'm sorry if you addressed what I'm about to ask at the beginning of your presentation, because I ran out of the call. I walked in about 15 minutes.
No worries.
Something that I always think about in terms of going out to different communities and recording language is just what to do or how to be mindful of the power dynamic that can be inherent going into that.
Yes.
As someone who's paying a lot of funding and wealth and
Yes.
power to decide what happens. So I get glimpses of that like throughout your process. But
Yes.
I'm curious what your general approach is to that.
Yes, there's a power dynamic. This is a problem that, or a dynamic that the field of linguistics and anthropology and other social sciences